Hey, 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 I'm Michelle.
And I'm Greta.
We are girlfriends who have always been seekers. We love learning, sharing, and most of all, we love having those soul-to-soul moments with our girlfriends.
Our podcast is about spiritual connection and sisterhood. You are not alone. So grab your glass, get comfy, and join us as we make some noise, light up the room, and
Get into it.
I am so excited to talk about gardening today because it's something that is very personal to me. And I don't know, I wouldn't even call it a hobby. I feel like it's part of my morning ritual to go out into my garden. It's become like a meditation for me. It's just so many things I never expected gardening could be.
I admire your passion for it and your skill.
Oh, well, about that.
It is. I mean, I have seen your garden and it is gorgeous. And it really does take a lot of focus and attention and love that you need to pour into a project like that. So I admire you for that.
It's funny that you brought up the love and the attention. And I think when I first was talking to a friend about starting a garden, I had a garden a gazillion years ago when the kids were babies. And I mean, it was this little patch of dirt that I dug a hole and stuck some things in, and the snails and slugs ate them immediately. And it was really, there was some tomatoes grew and the kids would go out and pick them. And I think we grew some snap peas and they loved those. And so it was a great experience, but it wasn't much of a garden really. Okay. But you know, about 5 years ago, I was talking to a friend and she was like, you should get a garden. I love my garden. It's the best thing ever. And to me, it just sounded like a lot of work and one more thing to take care of. I'm busy. I'm trying to work and raise kids and get them to soccer and all of that stuff. And it just was like, ugh, it sounds exhausting. I don't have time for that. But it's surprising how much the garden actually gives back and fills me up. So yeah, when you'd mentioned the love and devotion, it's like, no, it gives it back tenfold.
Yeah, it becomes like a therapeutic process in a sense, you know, like, well, it's a relationship. It's a giving and receiving. And then there's a level of therapy that I would imagine you experience as you're there. Like you're in this meditative state and it's the mindfulness that we talk about and all of that. So when starting a garden, what would you suggest? Like the first few things somebody should try to maybe have a little bit more success? I would give up immediately and say, this is it. It's not for me.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be a couple of things like, hey, if you start with these things, you might, get some quick results?
Yes. Well, okay. So now we're getting more into the technical stuff. And I do want to get back into the meditative thing that I get from it. But yeah, if you can't even get the shit to grow, then how are you going to have this meditative, wonderful experience? Because yeah, I'll say my first year of gardening was not a beautiful experience. It was very depressing every time when I went out there and nothing was doing what it was supposed to do. So I'll just start with my own experience. I put in bad dirt. I didn't know you could have different dirt. The soil is so important. It has to be really nutrient rich. And
that's a big deal. See, when you said bad dirt, I'm like, what do you mean? Dirt's dirt.
No, that's what I thought too. And I don't know. I just bought like some cheap dirt and it didn't hold the moisture when you watered. It was depleted of all the minerals and nutrients. I mean, that's what's feeding your plant.
And that's what you're consuming after you're harvesting. Yeah. So yes, that would be extremely important then to start just with the soil, the foundation of it all. Okay.
So you got to get really good soil. I would go to a nursery and get that soil that just had, whatever they recommend for. I used bumper crop. It's good, rich soil with compost. And then it also has chicken shit, which sounds disgusting and it smells horrible.
You gotta fertilize it.
But this is the cycle of life. The chicken shits, it goes into the dirt, it feeds the plant, and then we get to, it sounds gross, but
eat it and then poop it out. And then we digest and eliminate.
Yes. It's a whole thing. Like, this is how it works. Yeah. It's not that complicated. So it makes sense that the plant needs that. So, I mean, that when I discovered that you can add the chicken shit in, and it's like my garden was so much happier that on my second year. But yeah, now I'm 5 years into it. And even then, I've had a bad year mixed in. There's things you can't control. And you sort of just have to go with the flow and like figure things out along the way. And, my first year, I watered way too much and my plants weren't doing well. And I asked the local nursery, why do my tomato plants look like this? And they let me know. So have someone you can go to. Also Google. I use Google constantly.
Yeah, I'd imagine you can also YouTube a lot of this also
yeah.
and get like tutorials on demand. And I love that you said that though, like consult somebody. This doesn't have to be a lonely project.
No.
This is something, and I think gardens in general are very communal. You know, I mean, even when you're harvesting, you're sharing it, whether it's with your family, your neighbors. I love that. When my neighbors come over with all the produce that they've just grown in their backyards, it is such a special gift. I love that. So it is something that you shouldn't just go into and think it's just me and I have to figure it all out. I mean, there are so many experts and people who have gone before you and had success. So like definitely reach out to the people.
Yes. There's so much information out there. It's great. I'll get into more about the bugs, but I love Googling the bugs to find out which ones are good and which ones got to go. So no, there's a wealth of information. Probably the biggest thing, even before soil, is location. So you just have to make sure you have a lot of sunlight, that a majority of your day, this space that you pick, gets sun. Because without sun, it's just not going to do well. So you need to have sun. I don't remember exactly how many hours. You can Google that. But you need to have a decent amount of sun throughout the warmer parts of the morning until about 2 p.m. is really what you want. Anything after that, like it's great. My house is set up where the house blocks the really hot afternoon sun that can scorch the plants. So it's not like it has to be all day sun from morning till, sundown. But just if you get like that healthy earlier through the afternoon sun.
Okay, that's important to note. And you're right, because I'll talk a little bit about my aeroponic garden a little bit later, but I will say that where I positioned that did make a very big difference. It's almost like some of my leaves were getting burned. And because like we live in a hotter climate during the summer, I think, you kind of have to also be aware of where and how long. And mine was on wheels. So actually it was really easy to just like move around.
That.
I know. With the planter box or right in the dirt, but so I will share my experience in a little bit because this makes it very, very easy. So if some of this is feeling a little overwhelming for a listener, don't worry. We've got some other alternative ways.
And I hope it doesn't overwhelm you. I really think you can start so small. You can start with a couple pots on your back deck or the aeroponic garden, like you're saying, or, I realize like not everybody has space, and maybe you have a little apartment and you have one little back deck and it gets a little bit of sun. When I went to Italy, it was awesome. There was tomato and basil growing in a little patch of dirt at the gas station.
Just wild.
I think they just plant it. Like they're like, if there's any sun and dirt, like the Italians are just
they're just
utilizing tomatoes and basil. Yeah.
Utilizing the space that they have. So it could be done anywhere. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's like whatever you have, just kind of try to work with what you have and make the best of it. And I think the reason I even wanted to do this podcast topic was because I feel that there's so much more that goes into growing something from the earth than just on the outside surface of it when you think of gardening. When you think of gardening, you think of like the little old lady, out there with her clippers. It's like, it's so much more than that for me. It's definitely meditative. It's definitely something you go and you lose yourself. When you're in that garden, you're not thinking about anything else. You are looking at the little bees that are coming, the birds, the hummingbirds, just the smells, the way the plants are blowing in the breeze. You're just a part of nature. There's this oneness that happens. And I will tell you, when I don't feel like getting up and doing yoga because maybe I'm, exhausted or sad or whatever, I always feel like going out to my garden.
You get a sense of energy or like just.
Yeah. I mean, my feet are on the ground. I never wear shoes. I mean, my heels are terrible right now, but but it's this whole experience for me. I'm out there. I hand water everything. I don't have irrigation. I mean, maybe one day I will pay the money and have that done. But right now I'm like, I don't know if I want to lose that.
I don't know if I knew that you went out there and hand watered it. So
sometimes twice a day because it's been warm. But
wow.
I mean, you can definitely set up irrigation if that's not, but I get so much from that that I don't know if I'm ready to give that up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's you nurturing and tending to creation.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And I don't think about any of my worries when I'm out there. All I'm focused on are the plants and the little bugs that I had no idea. I was never a bug. I hated spiders. This gardening thing has completely changed that for me. Spiders are so good for the garden. They eat all the bad bugs. So every time I see a spider, I get so excited.
It's like, thank you, friend. Thanks for showing up
and I'll
being
just
part of this.
And it's amazing because you have just this dirt and then you put the little plants in and all of a sudden you just watch the life come. They just show up where there was nothing.
That's amazing.
And you have these little ecosystems. I just added flowers the last couple years, and I highly recommend doing that. The joy, the colors, and then all the little bees and everything that comes. It's so fulfilling. And it's just this great, very present experience for me.
I love that. I was actually at a garden that is maintained at a camp recently, and it was so cool because this woman who was taking me through it all, she's a botanist. And so I got to really get into what the plant is, what it's doing, why they would plant this plant or flower near this plant. Companion plants. And then there were a lot of leaves that she was picking and allowing, and flower petals. She's like, try this. Well, what do you mean try this? She goes, eat it. We can eat this? Like I always hear that, plants are poisonous and you have to know, like you have to actually know what, you can't just go around eating all plants.
Yeah, don't do that.
It's very important. But it was such a cool experience to see the variety of what was being grown. And all of this is basically in our backyard. But what I think I enjoyed the most was the passion that was also coming from her, because truly this is something that she is educated on, but also lives for. And so that was a really cool experience to be part of as well. So I'm hearing as you're talking, I'm like, yes, that is kind of how I felt when this woman was taking me through this big community garden and sharing all these different things with me and the excitement that was coming through, but really looking at it from the dirt.
Yeah.
And then coming up to like what blooms and, what we then get to harvest and put in our bodies it's phenomenal. I mean,
I really feel like it connects us.
Yeah.
We are so disconnected as a society from nature. And I just think that's such a loss that we've experienced. And there's something about just having your hands in the dirt. I don't even wear gloves. My manicure is horrible right now. But it just gives me such a sense of connectedness. Yeah. And like I'm a part of all of this. And it's hard to even put into words, just the feeling of peace that I have when I go out into the garden.
Yeah.
And the way the worries melt away. And you realize how small you are. You're a part of something so much bigger than you. I think a lot of that was just watching the little bugs come and watching I fell in love with this grasshopper. I didn't even know that little baby grasshoppers looked exactly like big grasshoppers. It's really freaking cute. And I watched him grow and go all the way into adulthood and get his wings. And then one day he was gone. But it was like I would go out to visit this grasshopper every morning. And if I couldn't find him, I would be sad. And I'd look for him. But then he'd pop up. He'd still be there.
Did you name him?
Jiminy. Yeah.
Oh,
like a cricket. But yeah, Jiminy.
Cute.
I had to think about it. This is last summer. Right now I have a ton of praying mantises. They also look exactly like little baby praying mantises. And they're really good for the garden. So I'm excited about that. I know. I'm such a garden insect nerd. And like if you would have asked me this, I don't know, even 5 years ago, before I started this whole gardening thing, I would have been like, no, that is not how I want to spend my time.
But here you are grounding
I am.
in. And that's the other thing you and I talk a lot about, just like grounding and getting your feet in the earth, and it's the same thing with your hands. Being able to release all the energy that the fake or the synthetic energy that comes through our phones and our TV and all of that kind of thing.
The rubber soles on our shoes. They said that was one of the worst inventions for mankind because it stopped that energetic connection from the core of the earth.
Yes, it blocks that. And so now so many of us are sitting with all this, all these vibrations that aren't good. And we need to kind of release those out. And so being able to get your hands in a garden or feet in the grass, like all those things are so healthy for our bodies.
When you said that, it made me think we're like this transmitter. So we're absorbing this energy up through the soles of our feet and then letting it come out, letting it sort of detox all the other energy that we're picking up from all the frustrations and stresses of life.
Yep.
So that's fascinating. I want to read, this was so interesting, this study. There is increasing evidence that gardening provides substantial human health benefits. The result of research examining the effects of gardening in January 2016 reported a wide range of health outcomes, such as reductions in depression, anxiety, and body mass index, as well as increases in life satisfaction, quality of life, and sense of community, which you were touching upon. And then I saw something else and it said that soil is an antidepressant. So it's funny, like all of these things that I'm experiencing from the garden, there's actually been scientific proof. So it says soil is an antidepressant. The smell of Microbacterium bacille, a microorganism found in soil, compost, and leaf mold, lights up neurotransmitters that release serotonin.
Wow.
And so no wonder.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
I feel calm and relaxed out there and happy, and my worries melt away. I think it's a wonderful, I don't even like to call it a hobby. To me, it's really part of a practice, a ritual. It's so much more than a hobby. A hobby to me makes it sound like it's just this light, fluffy thing that is mindless.
Yeah. It's interesting because before we were recording, I didn't really put much thought. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't put much thought into this topic. I knew I was going to be very interested in speaking about it. And, throughout the years of talking to you and watching what you've been doing in your garden, I knew your passion for this. But as you're sharing data and you're saying all these things, I'm reflecting back on my own childhood and I'm remembering moments so my grandparents had a huge garden in their backyard and it was not in planters. It was just a plot of dirt that you stepped up to and there were all kinds of things in there. So getting back to the community part of it, I remember sitting in the garage and having green beans. We're all sitting in a circle and part of our job, the kids, because it was also fun, was to peel the green beans and put them all in a bucket. And, my grandmother then would cook everything that we harvested. And I did spend a lot of time just in the dirt. And it's so interesting because I really didn't put much thought into that until you started sharing mostly what the data was saying, to your point of the meditative part of it and then the communal part of it. And the health part of it, because the food that we were served as kids were so nutrient dense.
Yeah.
I mean, they came.
No pesticides.
None.
You knew where it came from. You knew where your food came from. And so many cultures came to America and were growing their own food. That's not that long ago that's sort of stopped. I think it stopped with our grandparents, really. But it's the childhood memories, the connection with the earth, giving children jobs, I think is something that we've really lost along the way. I mean, a lot of kids are just on video games and they kind of stay out of the way. And it's like, no, we all used to have these little jobs. We were part of a family and we were part of the meal and the preparation.
Yes. And to understand where everything came from. So I'm having visions of being in my grandfather's backyard and grapevines that were just all over the trellises. And we used to go out there and they were the teeny tiny, like little champagne kind of grapes. And we would just pick a bunch, not even rinse them off. I mean, just,
They had that little dustiness on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just eating them straight off the vine, and some of them were really sour, and then so you're also you're having this whole palate experience at the same time where it's the a mindfulness practice, but you're not even, when I was a kid, I wasn't even aware of it, but it's like, ooh, let me taste this one. And oh, this one looks a little more plump. I'm going to go grab that, get the different flavor. Sometimes there were seeds, sometimes there weren't. And so we were talking amongst ourselves as cousins, as we're doing these, like that was part of our fun and part of our play. And we have gotten so removed from that experience. So I love that people, especially during COVID, a lot of people started to try to bring gardens back. And I know a lot of like homeschooling families who are home and have time to really tend to the garden. And I know more schools are starting to bring gardens in as well. So yes, I think schools are starting to understand the importance and how far we've gotten away from kids getting their hands in the dirt. And it is funny because when you think about it, I have been around a lot of parents in the past who are like, oh, don't get your hands dirty. Like there became this whole thing that shifted where it was a society thing where it's like, you should not be dirty. And then hand sanitizer and wipes and all these things kind of came on the scene. And it sort of got into these kids' minds of dirt is not good.
Yeah.
And
God made dirt and dirt don't hurt, right?
Exactly. So if your stuff falls on the floor, it's fine. No, that's the only way you're getting it in. Let that cookie fall on the floor and eat it. But I mean, this is just coming to me where when I think of the age of all the sanitization that started to happen, that also moved us a little bit further away from like, hey, it's fine to have dirty knees and hands that have dust on them. You kind of need to be exposed to these things to build up your immunity.
And dirt literally makes you not depressed. So come on.
The data is there. Okay.
The data
is freaking there. Yeah. It's so
My mom was really brilliant when it came to all this kind of stuff. I mean, years ago, she said she didn't like the hand sanitizer. She was like, yeah, wash your hands. But, like there just is a point where you're getting rid of all the good bacteria.
Yes.
We're meant to be exposed to these things in the environment.
Yep.
We're a part of it.
Totally.
Like to think that we have to completely, sanitize ourselves just to be out if we're outside in nature.
Yes. Yes.
We are again like separating and thinking we're something that's not a part of it. And that's mind-blowing to me.
So I have this funny story, and I remember being at a school nearby my grandparents' house, and my brother fell and he cut his hand open a little bit. And I don't know why, we were very young, and my natural instinct was to go rinse it out, and then I was trying to pack it with dirt. Like I was literally bringing like dirt and leaves, but it was sort of this innate thing that was like, you need the earth to kill you.
Wow.
I know. It's totally crazy, but
we need to do past life regression on Michelle.
Right? It's like, what the heck? But there is something, I don't know. And I maybe it was because I spent so much time in my grandparents' garden that all of that meant health and healing.
Yeah.
And so that was the association with it. But I definitely feel like I've always been sort of connected to the earth that way. And so it does make me sad that I don't have as much of a passion for gardening myself. But I did find something that was kind of cool.
Well, you got 3 kids, you have a busy life. And
yes.
I think for me, it was all of a sudden that time and space opened up.
Sure.
I don't know that I could have done it when they were a little younger. Might have felt overwhelming. I mean, there's different phases in our lives, right? So
yeah, no, that's a total good point. But I found something really cool. So for those of you who may not like the dirt part, and that's fine, I started an aeroponic garden, and there's a basin where you have your water and you have these nutrients that you pour into the water, and you've got to balance that out. So there's a little bit of science that, you have to do. It's like a science experiment, but the seeds and the little sprouts come in like a rock wool. That's how they're delivered to you. And you kind of stick them into these little pouches. And basically there is a water system that is on a timer. And so really your only job is to make sure the nutrients are balanced and that there's enough water in the basin.
In the very beginning.
And throughout, because if it's a hot day, sometimes like the water gets evaporated. So you just got to make sure that, you have enough water in there, and you don't even have to check it. This is not even like a daily thing, but you got to be mindful of it. Sometimes the bugs. So we haven't talked about that yet, but I remember getting a lot of aphids. And so that was something that I had to manage, but it wasn't that hard. That's all you do. And then you just let it do its thing. And all of a sudden, like you get this beautiful, whatever you decide to plant. I've had spinach in there. I've had berries.
Homegrown spinach is so delicious. I don't know why it just tastes so much better.
It does. And I mean, I love a lot of herbs too. So even just like mint, I love putting mint in water. And so to be able to grow all of that, and that grows in abundance. But I was able to move this thing around. So at one point I had it in my house and I had grow lights on top of it. And then another time I had it outside. So it was just the natural sun. But what I think was so cool about it is it didn't take as much effort or space.
Yeah.
We definitely went through a fire season here. And so that really kind of messed up my aeroponic garden.
Messed up my outdoor garden too. All the ash on everything. And the sun was even sort of being blocked by how smoky it was. It was a rough year.
It was a rough year. So I lost a little bit of my motivation with that. But after this conversation, I'm going on vacation. So when I get back, I'm going to order my little seeds again, because when I saw the growth happen and I was able to walk outside and cut things, or the kids would just pick a berry off of that, watching the joy of, that experience was awesome. And it was everything you talked about, that meditative experience. That's what happened.
It's so fun. You could be having like a whatever day, and then you walk out to your garden, aeroponic or traditional, and it's like, what's growing? What is here? What is new today? It's so fun. It is that same kind of inner childlike excitement that I remember having, It
is. And everything's so vibrant. And then the smells, there's so much that it taps into. And we do talk a lot about mindfulness and activating the senses. So not only do you get this beautiful visual, you're touching things, you're smelling things, you're tasting things, all of those.
I loved even though it was such a pathetic garden, the patch of dirt when my kids were little, they were toddlers. It was so incredible watching them go out and pick a snap pea off the vine and try it. And I do feel like because they were introduced to that taste so early, there's health benefits down the line. They love vegetables. They experience that flavor. They experience that connection with the earth, and they love to eat their vegetables. That's never been an issue for me with my kids. So I think introducing it early in whatever way you can is great for kids.
Totally
great for kids.
So let's talk about bugs.
Oh, can I?
Yes, please.
I've been restraining myself, holding myself back.
Let's talk about the bugs.
I'm going to sound like the weird bug lady.
The birds, the bees, and the bugs. Let's talk about it all.
So it's funny, I mentioned the grasshopper, and Michelle and I were just starting to talk about this podcast at that time. And we looked up, I think I just looked it up. I don't know what made me think to look it up, but I was sharing this with Michelle. The meaning behind grasshopper was leaping forward into the future, not holding back, but allowing yourself to move forward into the future and take these big strides. And it was just so appropriate for where we were at with this podcast. And I felt like these little creatures that are a part of this planet, part of this earth, they would just sort of arrive in my garden at different times with different meanings to me. And so it became not only meditative, but spiritual. I've recently this summer was experiencing swallowtail butterflies coming and visiting me. Every time I went outside, it was crazy. I'd even see a shadow go over my head and I'd look up and it was a swallowtail butterfly. And when I was a little girl and my grandpa had just passed away, my mom would say that that's your grandpa when a swallowtail butterfly would come by. And I really hadn't seen any for years. So I do feel like there's some connectedness. There's something that is even bigger than we are able to see or understand happening through nature in all facets. It's just a beautiful experience to be a part of if you allow it, if you open up your mind and consider that maybe these little bugs are a part of something so much bigger.
Well, and I remember when you had this experience with the grasshopper. And shortly after that, I was at a friend's house and she went to serve me water and a grasshopper happened to be in the cup that she pulled out. And so again, it was like, okay, we're about to start this podcast journey and grasshoppers are coming to you. They're showing up, not even in my own domain, but my friend's about to serve me some water and, oh, here, I have a grasshopper too. So yeah, it did become a very spiritual experience as we went into the meaning of that. And I think these environments like a garden just create
the space for it to allow to come.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you notice them, because a lot of times, again, just you and I the other day going on a walk, we started noticing little frogs. Like we're having this frog infestation kind of in our area. But you can walk along and not even notice those things. But when you're really paying attention, you start to see the beauty in all the things, including the insects. And so, but I love going into those deep meanings of why are these things showing up?
Yes.
Why is this butterfly coming here? Why is this grasshopper here? So that's really cool.
I do believe nature is speaking to us all the time if we pay attention. Yeah. So even when I had the bird nest, we've talked about this on, an episode about letting your children go off to college and how hard that is. I had birds that built a nest right on my front porch. And the timing was literally as my daughter was graduating high school. And the last one flew away. I think it was right the day that she graduated. It was a trip, the timing of it. And so, you can just be like, it's spring. Of course, there's going to be birds. But I think it's more if you allow it to be.
Yeah, there's definitely synchronicities in life that are not coincidental and they're there for a reason. And again, it's about paying attention to those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can choose to brush it off.
Yes.
If that's how you feel, makes you feel more comfortable, or you can listen, pay attention. And I choose to pay attention.
Yeah.
And in those present moments, have had such wonderful gifts come from that. This is funny. My friend was saying, you got to tell about the gold spider. So there's things I didn't even know existed that have come to my garden.
Okay.
And I don't think I don't know that there was a spiritual meaning behind this gold spider. It was more just like, holy fuck, it's like gold metallic.
What?
It was this
I've never
little
heard of
jumping
that.
spider and it was gold, not yellow or orange, gold metallic. It was beautiful. And I had no idea that even existed.
I didn't either until this moment.
But I love just paying attention, seeing what I can see. We had one of those frogs hop through my garden area. I picked it up, put it in one of the bins. So I'm like, oh, good. Eat the bugs.
Yes.
That's what they eat. So it's been such a joyous, fun, deeper experience than I ever could have imagined. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that I was brave enough to attempt a garden.
I remember an old neighbor of mine had a garden and we were asked to help out while she was gone. And oh my gosh, the stuff that was growing in there, like all the squash was freaking ginormous. Huge squash.
Oh, yeah.
And
you don't really want to let it get that big.
Well, maybe we took too long to go and cut it down. I don't know. And then we actually had some fun playing with all these ginormous vegetables, just being silly and stupid. But she had sunflowers in there and it was just so pretty. And so I remember I didn't care about gardens back then, at that time in my life, but it felt like an honor to be asked to go and help out with this. Mm-hmm. And then, she was like, hey, just take what you want. And so back to that communal thing, every time I think of a garden, to me, it just really brings up people getting together and just sharing an experience.
That made me think, if you live in an apartment and you don't have a balcony that gets sun, or maybe you don't have a balcony at all, maybe you could check out the community garden. A lot of towns and cities have community gardens now, and you can volunteer to go work there and harvest and take care of the plants. And I just think for what it's given me to have that space, I just want everyone to be able to try it out and see what it can do for them.
Yeah.
So much
so I
more.
love how you started the conversation where it's like you're giving to this garden and then you're getting back. And it really is this relational experience, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yep. Just the connection, the groundedness, the science behind what that dirt, plain old dirt does for your soul.
Yeah. Well, think about also when you go to another town and you hear there's like a farm to table restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but that kind of lights me up to know what this is a farm to table. Like they're actually just pulling straight from their backyard and putting it on my plate.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I'm being, I don't know, it's like I'm being nurtured and loved through food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let food be thy medicine. That's legit.
How many people don't really even think about where their food comes from, or they just, they're always getting fast food and it doesn't even really appear like food anymore at that point.
Food product.
Yeah. So, getting back, when you say farm to table, it's like you're cutting out all that middleman bullshit and you're just getting it from the farm, from the earth. And, those are usually the really pricey places, but it does feel like such a luxury and like such a decadent treat to have that. And it shouldn't be like that. That's really simple living. That's really how it was all designed for us.
Yeah, like how backwards is that thinking that we're going to pay more? You're actually paying more for that when it's growing naturally than the crap that we're getting served at a discount, that's actually doing damage.
Garbage food,
to our organs. That's like such backwards thinking, the
food that had to have so much more processing done to it is cheap.
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
No, we're little back-ass words.
Well, and this is something else that I was just thinking of too. When I think about if anyone out there has heard of Ayurveda, which is Eastern philosophies, but the way they even eat in those belief systems are, it's really like what's in season and what's good for your body at that time. And so I think also in America, it's been interesting because we produce pretty much everything all year round. So it doesn't, fruits and vegetables don't even have a season anymore. It's just like, oh, you want a watermelon in January? You can get one. And so that's a little bit concerning also. When you go to the grocery store and you're like, oh, this came from Nicaragua. It's like, how much time did it take to pick something in Nicaragua and have it travel all the way to a grocery store in California?
Right.
Fruit doesn't last that long. Okay. The minute you pick it off the vine, it's already dying. So how is it that we have such vibrant fruit that's coming from other places in the world?
Right.
There's a lot going into that.
Yeah. I pick a cucumber and if I don't put it right in the fridge, it gets soft. Probably not even an hour later. It instantly, like you're saying, that's not natural, right?
No, it's not.
And I loved how you brought up, I don't even remember the word you used, but I worked with an Indian woman who was teaching me about that. She was like, pomegranates are in season right now. This was in the wintertime because this is what we need. It's full of antioxidants and the things that keep us from getting sick during the winter.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I had never even thought of that or heard of that before.
Yeah.
And all of that. Oranges. Think about that when things are naturally in season and what those nutrients provide you at that time. It makes a lot of sense.
It does. Like that. And so there's also like biofarming, which is interesting too, where you harvest things by the moon or by the sun. So,
well, yeah, our ancestors were smart and they figured out a lot of things that we have lost. And I don't know why we would have gotten away from it. I mean, I think it's a lot of things that we can use today.
Well, it's all convenience. Like we live in a world of convenience. So anything that's going to make things quicker, a study comes out and it's like, oh, this fruit is great for you. Well, then all of a sudden it's being mass produced everywhere and there's an abundance of it, even though it's not in season, just because a study comes out.
Remember, the kale was a superfood and then something else was avocados were a superfood. And it's like, it's all super wonderful.
Yeah, they're all super. Every food is super.
You. It's all designed to give us health benefits.
Yeah. So. Totally. So it's an interesting topic because
nature knows what it's doing.
Nature knows. We have to listen. We have to pay attention.
We have to get back tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's funny because we were talking about the bugs. Like, it's just a bug. It's just a spider, whatever. But no, these bugs are tuned in.
Yeah.
when to come. They know what to eat and they're connected. We're not. Like we can actually learn from nature.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I hope you are brave and you plant something, anything, just a little bit of dirt and a pot, if that's all you have, but just watch and bask in the delight of watching something grow and enjoy and be a part of something that is bigger than you.
It's a miracle. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked what you heard and we're your girls,
please share and add a review on iTunes so we can continue to grow our circle. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at That's My Girl Podcast.